The laughter echoed down the polished marble hallway like a stain that refused to be scrubbed away. It followed Arman Qureshi every morning as he pushed his rattling janitor's cart past the glass offices on the 32nd floor. The same men who wore imported suits and silk ties would pause their conversations just long enough to smirk at the single dad who cleaned their coffee stains and emptied their trash cans. They mocked the way he hummed old lullabies while wiping down the CEO's desk, the way he carefully aligned every frame on the wall as if it truly mattered. To them, he was invisible. To them, he was just the help. But sometimes the quietest man in the room carries the heaviest story. If you believe in kindness and second chances, take a moment right now to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to Whisper Tales 3. Stories like this remind us that no one's journey is what it seems. Arman had not always pushed a mop. Years ago, under the blazing Karachi sun, he had stood outside a hospital with trembling hands as doctors fought to save his wife Samina. She never made it out of surgery. One moment he had been a husband planning a future, and the next he was a single father holding a newborn daughter who would grow up without her mother's voice. Her name was Meher, which meant kindness, because that was the only thing Arman wanted to surround her with in a world that had suddenly turned merciless. Before tragedy, Arman had worked as a junior accountant for a small textile firm. He had numbers in his head and dreams in his pocket. But grief does strange things to a man. He missed deadlines, forgot meetings, and slowly watched his job slip away. When the company downsized, he was among the first to go. With hospital bills mounting and formula to buy, pride became a luxury he could no longer afford. That was how he ended up working the early shift at Orion Global Enterprises, one of the tallest office towers in the city. The irony was not lost on him. He cleaned the offices of men who discussed investments and acquisitions in numbers larger than he could comprehend, while he calculated whether he could afford milk and electricity in the same week. Every day began the same way. Dawn light streamed through the enormous windows as he entered the CEO's office. It was a spacious room with a mahogany desk, leather chairs, and a wall of awards that glittered in the morning sun. The CEO, Raza Rahmani, was known for being brilliant, and ruthless employees straightened their backs when he passed. Assistants whispered that he remembered every mistake anyone had ever made. Arman never met him directly. He arrived before Raza and left before the executive meetings began. Yet he treated the office with quiet respect. He dusted each plaque, polished the desk until it reflected the sky, and watered the single green plant by the window. He did it not because anyone noticed, but because he believed work, no matter how small, deserved dignity. The ridicule from some staff members grew sharper over time. They would leave crumbs deliberately, joke that Arman should clean faster so he could afford a better shirt, whisper that single fathers never raised children properly. He absorbed it all in silence. Every insult felt like another weight on his shoulders, but he carried it because Meher's school fees were due, and her tiny drawings of their two-person family were taped to the wall of their one-bedroom apartment as proof that he was doing something right. One bright Tuesday morning, as sunlight spilled across the CEO's desk, Arman began his usual routine. He lifted a stack of papers to wipe underneath and accidentally brushed against a silver picture frame that had been turned slightly away from view. It fell gently onto the desk, not breaking but flipping over to reveal a photograph he had never seen before. It was an old, slightly faded picture of a little boy standing beside a thin man in a janitor's uniform. The boy was smiling widely, holding a trophy. The man beside him looked tired but proud, his hands rough and his eyes shining with love. Something about the image felt intimate, vulnerable. Arman hesitated, then carefully picked it up to straighten it. As he wiped the glass, he noticed a faint resemblance between the boy in the photo and the stern CEO whose name was engraved on the office door. The same sharp jawline, the same intense eyes. The man in the janitor's uniform must have been his father. Footsteps echoed in the hallway. Arman quickly placed the photo back, aligning it perfectly with the edge of the desk. But this time, he left it facing forward. A few minutes later, the office door opened earlier than usual. Raza Rahmani stepped inside, phone in hand, mid-conversation. He paused when he noticed Arman still there. Their eyes met for the first time. The air felt charged, fragile. Raza's gaze shifted to the photo. For a brief second, something softened in his expression. He walked toward the desk slowly, as if approaching a memory. His call ended. Silence filled the room. Arman lowered his eyes, expecting reprimand for lingering too long. Instead, he sensed something else entirely. The CEO stood looking at the picture, then at Arman's card, then back at the picture again. Later that day, the mocking voices in the hallway fell strangely quiet. Word spread that the CEO had asked about the janitor who cleaned his office. By afternoon, Arman was summoned, not to be scolded, but to sit in the large leather chair across from the mahogany desk. Raza's office felt different now. The sunlight seemed warmer, less intimidating. On the desk, the childhood photo remained visible. Raza spoke in a low, measured tone, explaining that his father had been a janitor in a government school. He had worked double shifts so his son could study under proper lights at night. The world had mocked him too. Teachers had assumed the boy would never amount to much because of his background, but that janitor had believed in his son when no one else did. Arman listened, heart pounding, as the powerful CEO admitted he sometimes hid that photo because it reminded him of a past he had worked hard to escape. Seeing it face forward that morning had forced him to remember where he came from. In the days that followed, the tone of the entire office shifted. The laughter stopped. The whispers faded. Raza publicly acknowledged Arman's dedication during a company meeting, not in a way that embarrassed him, but in a way that honored him. He spoke about dignity in every role and the unseen sacrifices parents make. More than that, he asked about Meher. When Arman mentioned her love for numbers and how she counted everything from pigeons on rooftops to the stars she could see at night, Raza offered something unexpected. He arranged a scholarship fund for employees' children, starting with Meher. He said talent should never be limited by circumstance. Arman walked home that evening, under the golden glow of the setting sun, his janitor's cart replaced by a lightness he had not felt in years. Meher ran into his arms as usual, chattering about her day. He held her tighter, knowing that tomorrow would be different. The childhood photo had not changed everything in a single dramatic sweep. Arman still woke before dawn. He still cleaned desks and emptied trash bins. But the way people looked at him had changed. More importantly, the way he looked at himself had changed. He was not just a janitor. He was a father shaping a future. Sometimes the world mocks what it does not understand. It laughs at uniforms and overlooks sacrifice. But kindness has a way of resurfacing, like a photograph turned back toward the light. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you of someone who works quietly and deserves respect, please take a moment to like, comment, and share this video. Your engagement helps stories of hope reach more hearts. And before we end, comment kindness always returns if you believe that no act of dignity is ever wasted. Because in the end, the man they mocked was never just cleaning an office. He was polishing a legacy, one quiet morning at a time, under the honest brightness of day.